Hey y'all, this is Marley K. Hope y'all are well. I need to do a follow-up to the diversity, equity, and inclusion video that I did on yesterday, January 3rd, because I have a whole lot of white people in my comments seemingly and disingenuously wanting to argue that now that affirmative action has been rolled back and DEI programs are going away, that now we can go back to merit based hiring and hiring based on talents. And it really pisses me off. One, I shouldn't even be doing this video because these people are always going to be disingenuous. They are never, ever, ever, ever going to see the error in their ways, in their culture, in their people's ways. But I wanted to do a follow up video for my people, African American Black people, who affirmative action initially was put in place for, because the whole purpose of it was to prevent gatekeepers, white people who are in HR positions and their um, tokens, whatever race or ethnicity or nationality those people are, even sometimes black people, who will discriminate during the hiring process, during the screening process, during the application process, so that despite people having the same qualifications, someone can be screened out or taken out of the process because of their name, because of their ethnicity, because of where they live, because of where they went to college. And having been someone that has sat on hiring screening processes in higher ed, working in management and having to screen myself, I've also had to look at a lot of different factors to determine who I'm going to hire for certain positions throughout my professional career when I worked in management. And so I know people discriminate. I try my best not to be biased and discriminate, but I'm sure I have discriminated against some people, not not in ways that were uh, by race, but I'm sure I have had biases. Like, I wasn't always as quick to take a risk on someone who was right out of college, because especially when I worked in the workforce, because they didn't always have the best workplace etiquette. They needed to be on their phones. They needed frequent breaks. They had emotional issues. They had all kinds of reasons why they needed to, not do their work. I just didn't have time for that. So I prefer someone with more experience. But I would hire um, people right out of college, young people, right, not long out of high school, young people who had little work experience based on the interview. But because I have experienced biases and racism, it always made me more aware and sensitive to the fact that I needed to be fair. And that's something that white people seemingly cannot understand. Like, they don't have and I'm not saying all white people, but the ones that are all in my comments of this other video seemingly cannot understand how you cannot hire for merit and talent when folks are screened out during the application process because they have a black first name or a black last name, or perhaps they went to a HBCU, which lets you know that individual is black. Maybe they went to um, black high school in a area. If it's someone that's being hired locally, or if you are trying to hire people and they're coming, have applicants from all over the country, you can easily do research and find out what type of school is candidate coming from, whether it's high school, college, et cetera, et cetera. Even down to the street where the person lives now. where the person grew up, where that school is. Is it in a good neighborhood? Is it in a suburb? Is it in an urban area? Is it in the hood? Is it in the ghetto? Um, there are all sorts of ways to eliminate candidates if you want to, if you are a gatekeeper in HR. And what white people are unwilling and incapable of acknowledging is that throughout our history in this country, white people have always been gatekeepers for employment opportunities, for loan opportunities, for everything, for education. There's not been a gate that they have not kept. And they have made sure to put tokens in those positions when they needed DEI representation. They made sure they put tokens in who would carry out their wishes, people who would exclude the people that they didn't want in the workplace. And so I don't want to hear nothing about merit and talent, because there are too many studies out here that have proven over and over and over again America and Europe will discriminate against Black people, Africans, Arabs, Muslims, Indians, people from India, Southeast Asia, Northeast. Doesn't matter. If you ain't white, you can be discriminated against. But what I've also found is that when these people are allowed in and they move up the ranks, they do the same thing that white people do to us. They keep us out of the workforce. So it is a confederacy, a joint effort of gatekeeping that keeps Black people, in particular Black men, out of the workforce. And so I want to do a couple of articles. They're from different years, different um, organizations, but just to show where it does not matter about merit and it does not matter about talent. Racism, white supremacy is what keeps people oppressed. It keeps people out of the workforce. It keeps people from even having a fair shot at an interview because people are screened out and not called back because of white gatekeepers and their tokens. So let's get into this. So hiring and recruitment. So this story came out in 2017 and I remember it because I wrote about it on Medium, which you can't see now because they blocked me. But anyway, Harvard Business Review. Hiring and recruitment. Hiring discrimination against Black Americans hasn't declined in 25 years, and that was with affirmative action until it was struck down this year. So it says race is often at the forefront of American conversation. It has lately emerged with new urgency around discussions of policing, immigration, First Amendment rights, and even professional football. And yet, even as we are confronted with dramatic examples of ongoing racial tensions, most white Americans remain convinced that race is no longer central to one's opportunities in life. Same exact thing I'm talking about. This was in 2017. It is 2023. And white people still saying the same thing in my comments. So this is how you know them people ain't gonna change. So if you are still doing anti-racism work and Babylon is falling, shame on you. You should be working to preserve your own collective group because these people are going to be utterly destroyed. They are unrepentant. They do not do recompense. They are unwilling to accept accountability and responsibility for their behavior currently and the behaviors of their ancestors. They refuse to admit that they prevent opportunities, for us in particular. Because I'm not talking about any other group. I'm not talking about women and people with disabilities and the alphabet people. I'm talking about Black people because everything is all about Black people at the end of the day. And all these other groups latched themselves onto us and got ahead of us, leapfrogged on top of us, and got all these opportunities that we couldn't get, all these resources that and investments from the governments that we could not get. And now that it's gone, everybody is disappointed. But it never helped us anyway. And this is what I want to prove to Black people. It's like no matter what they put in place, if you're not going to address and punish the gatekeepers, it doesn't matter what they put in place. You could put all the laws and policies and whatever at any institution you want. But until you deal with racists and punish them for being racist and catching them and enforcing whatever policies you put in place, it's not going to matter. And that's something that this country has never been willing and able and wanting to do. And quite frankly, it's too late now. So I don't care. We don't care if affirmative action is rolled back. It ain't did nothing for us anyway. We don't care what they do. We ain't voting for nobody because they ain't gonna do nothing for us. We don't care about nothing they roll back because they ain't gonna do nothing for us. Black folks just better get ready to war with their hands because that's what's coming next. I've been telling people since 2016, this is the end of the Reconstruction era, the second one, and you're getting ready to go back to slave codes and Jim Crow and black codes. So if you are not ready and you don't know about that period, I'm going to do a video on it. Excuse me. So that you can understand where we are headed back to, which is why these white men in particular who are in my comments are so haughty and arrogant and bold, because they actually think they are going to get back into some type of rulership. They are oblivious to how the whole world hates whiteness right now. Everybody's looking for something else. They don't want that rule anymore. So this system is coming down, and those people who deny our oppression and ignore the fact that they've kept us from having opportunities to generate wealth and have resources and assets for our families, their time is winding down too, and they're getting ready to go and experience the same type of suffering that we did, if not worse, except for we know how to survive because we've been oppressed for 400 years. They're whining and crying. They're going to be jumping off buildings and committing suicide and doing murder suicides and ODing and all kinds of stuff, road raging and you name it, because they are not well with being on the bottom. The bottom is for everybody and anybody but them, and they've had a long run, but that time is over. So let's see. Okay, so it says polling data shows that many believe these lingering conflicts represent the actions of a few bad apples that aren't in sync with the larger trend towards systemic racial equality, which does not exist. Wherever white people are, there is inequality, period. Are these beliefs accurate? What do we know about long term trends in racial discrimination? Excuse me. Discrimination, given how it often manifests subtly, those are microaggressions, is notoriously difficult to measure in any context. And that's because white people train each other how to subtly be racist. They know how to do it overtly when they need to be overt, and they know how to do it subtly, which is what they do in these HR positions. And then anytime they're in a position of power, they can gatekeep. That's what they do. It says, and until recently, we have not had much information that we could use to reliably assess changes in discrimination over time. However, in our recent study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, we were able to analyze trends in discrimination by performing a meta-analysis from all available field experiments pertaining to one area, racial discrimination in hiring. We focused on experiments performed since 1990, when field studies became more numerous and their methodologically improved. Sorry. We analyzed data from 24 field experiments, which included data from more than 54,000 applications across more than 25,000 positions. We chose field experiments as a sample because they are widely regarded as the most valid method to assess discrimination. They generally come in two major types: resume audits done through the mail or online, submit fictitious resumes with equivalent qualifications and ethnically identifiable names. And that is what we've talked about numerous times. They've done plenty of shows on how um, you submit fictitious resumes, same qualifications, different names, and how the white HR people would pick the white name over the black name just because that's who they're comfortable with, just because they had implicit biases, um, and sometimes explicit biases that they were not willing to address. And in-person audits done with trained pairs of testers, white and non-white, have participants apply for jobs. By examining the rates of callbacks or invitations to job interviews for white and non-white applicants with equivalent qualifications, these studies provide high-quality measures of rates of discrimination in hiring. This is what lets you know it doesn't matter about merit and it doesn't matter about your talent. Broadly, our meta-analysis of callback rates from all existing field experiments showed evidence of discrimination against both Black and Latino applicants. Since 1990, white applicants received on average 36% more callbacks than Black applicants and 24% more callbacks than Latino applicants with identical resumes. So again, merit and talent doesn't matter. When it comes to Latinos, we found some evidence of a decline in discrimination over the past 25 years. And if you measure now, you will find that to be true even more so because America has uh, and grandfathered those people into whiteness. And so now they have risen to positions where we used to be, and they gatekeep just like white people. So they hire their own, and they'll hire white people. They'll hire everybody and anybody except for black people. So there is a constant, perpetual anti-blackness in this nation. Because of the smaller number of field experiments, including Latinos, however, statistical tests indicate the evidence of decline is inconclusive. And again, this was back in 2017. So it says for Black applicants, which is who I'm talking about all the time, we found no change in hiring rates over time. In the figure below, the dots represent results from 21 studies contrasting white and Black applicants based on a total of 42,708 applications for 20,990 positions. The line shows the overall trend. The line slants slightly upward, but it's statistically indistinguishable from a flat line. So here you go. So this is I'm going to try to blow it up so you can see it. So this is an analysis of 21 field experiments contrasting white and Black Americans based on 42,708 applications for 20,990 positions. So this is the trend. And as you can see, not much has changed. This is the equal, 1.5. 1.0 is equal. 1.5 is here, not much over 1.5. So it's not like there's a increase or decrease. It's just everything pretty much stays the same from 1990 to 2015. So it says, we wonder if this level of discrimination might be influenced by applicant education, applicant gender, study method, occupational groups, and labor market conditions. When we controlled for these factors, we found that none account for the trend in discrimination. Under these and other adjustments, our results suggest that levels of discrimination against Black job applicants hasn't changed since 1990. And again, this was in 2017. So again, I just want to prove to all the white people who are happy about DEI going away. It doesn't matter if it was going away. It doesn't matter if it stays. Y'all are just racist all the time, nonstop. You're perpetually anti-Black. And anytime you get a position where you can gatekeep, y'all gatekeep. Doesn't matter what types of education we get. It doesn't matter what type of background we have. It doesn't matter if we're better than you. It depends on who is in the HR office and who they fear the most. Who breads their biscuits? Who butters their biscuits? That's all that matters. So this is another study by Northwestern now, and it says hiring discrimination, the problem that won't go away. This came out February 1st, 2023. Northwestern sociologists find discrimination in North America and Europe has changed very little. I wonder why. Is it because the children of the corn never change? Perhaps. I would say so. But never let me lie. Let the story tell itself. Decades ago, many experts predicted that hiring discrimination would gradually disappear as anti-discrimination laws took effect and social norms changed to favor diversity and reject racism. Ha! But this hasn't happened, and it has not happened because Esau and them are perpetually anti-Black. They hate Jacob. According to a new study from Northwestern sociologist Lincoln Quillian and former student John J. Lee, a recent graduate of the doctoral program in sociology. Instead, hiring discrimination against four racial and ethnic minority groups remained relatively consistent over the past several decades across 6 countries in North America and Europe, in Western Europe. The findings are disappointing, according to Quillian, a professor of sociology in the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. But he said, we could still reduce hiring discrimination going forward. No, we can't. We cannot. The only way you're going to get rid of it is if you get rid of the children of the corn, because they're going to gatekeep. If they got any ability to have power over anything, they're going to gatekeep. They're going to gatekeep for their own, because that's what they do. And they teach other people to do the same. And everybody else is allowed to do it except for Black people. Black people must be anti-Black too when they have those positions and hire who the dominant society wants them to hire, or be shunned and pushed out of their position. So they got fire on the left, fire on the right. They don't have a choice. The keys: enforcement and accountability. Northwestern now sat down with Quillian to learn about the study recently published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences and to better understand trends in hiring discrimination in Europe and North America since the 1990s. So this is the same thing that the other article from Harvard Business Review was talking about. Since the 1990s, nothing has changed. Now, that article from Harvard was in 2017. This one with Northwestern now is in 2023. So, to all the white people who are in the comments acting like, oh, now things can go back, we can go back to hiring for talent and hiring for merit and talent, or based on merit and talent, that's a lie. And nothing gonna go back to the way it was. Well, because it never changed. You hire because of race, period. And when you don't have to include anybody else, you don't include anybody else. So what is the key takeaway of the study? The biggest takeaway was that on average, there has been no change in hiring discrimination when combining data across 6 countries: Canada, France, Germany, Great Britain, the Netherlands, and the United States together. There's a broad pattern of stability. That means they're strong in their racism together. They're strong in their anti-Blackness and anti-colored folk. We also identified a few other interesting trends, including both increases and decreases in hiring discrimination for particular groups and countries. So it says, what were some of those trends? First, for ethnic groups that originate in the Middle East and North Africa, in mostly Muslim majority countries, there was an increase in discrimination. It's probable that that's because of the September 11th attacks and the wars that followed in Afghanistan and Iraq. Before about 2010, France had the highest level of discrimination of any of the countries studied. Go figure, France. Mm. But in this analysis, we saw it converge toward a level that was similar to other Western European countries. Finally, we found some evidence that there had been a general increase in discrimination across all groups over time in the Netherlands. Several countries had a slight upward trend, but it was statistically significant there. It's possible that more broadly, this increase is tied to things like the growth of far right politics and sentiment against non white immigrants. And I'm sure that has something to do with it, especially around 2000, between 2010 and 2016. It was also when President Obama got elected, this um, large anti black sentiment arose where a lot of white supremacists felt as though they were losing their power, and so they took on this attitude. In any place they could exude their racism, they did. And for me, I'll share just a personal story. During this time, I used to love to go deep sea fishing. I used to take charters out, and I would go by myself sometimes. But after this particular period, and I just moved to Florida, I went on a deep sea fishing charter. Most of the charters are by white men. Um, Most of them are very political, very Republican, almost, if you didn't know, they would be a Confederate soldier by the way they acted. And, before Obama was elected, I didn't ever have any issues with any white people. I never gave any thought to I might be putting my life in danger getting in a boat with some white people. And then 20 2008 came, and I started, just realizing how anti-black a lot of white people had become. Um, just covert, they would just covertly do stuff, covertly say stuff. And by the time Trump got elected, like they were just over besides themselves. And I had a couple incidents where, I was just going fishing, wasn't talking about nothing, and white men would be asking me, "Well, what do you think about Trump?" Like, I don't give a shit about Trump. I don't give a shit about none of these people because they don't care nothing about me. Excuse my French, but that's what I was thinking. Um, and I would pretty much say it just like that, like I don't give a shit. Let them know, hey, get off of me. I don't care nothing about this stuff now. Don't, because I'm from the South, so I already know what it is, and I already know how white people act. Anytime they think they can get over on somebody, they think they can slip something in, they'll try it. But I had to be very careful because, again, I'm on a deep sea fishing trip with none but white people, and so the last time I went out and I was on a fishing charter. It was a private charter, so it was just me and my ex-husband and probably maybe two or three other people on the boat that were with the captain. And the whole entire time, the captain and all the people want to talk about Trump. They want to talk about Trump. They want to talk about Trump. They want to talk about whatever they want to talk about, Republicans and Tea Party and whatever the little stuff they be saying, taking their country back. And I was like, you know what? This is very uncomfortable. And I'm too far out in the ocean to be talking trash to these men. I did have some pow pow with me and would have happily used them, but I didn't want the smoke if I needed to. So I was like, this is a situation where you pay for a charter, you fish, you leave. And from that point forward, I have not been on a private fishing charter. I really haven't been on any because Those are the types of environments where, that was a not a microaggression, it was a macroaggression in a situation where I was at a disadvantage. I did not really have any um, choice except for to listen to the back and forth and the banter about the politics. But this particular situation about the far right politics, um, and how it plays a role in your everyday work. This was a perfect example. This man ran a fishing charter, and this is his job. And so while he may be able to talk to other white people um, about politics, and it's cool because white people talk about what white people talk about when in white company. But when you do it with black people, it just is hits different. It's almost like flying a Confederate flag in our faces. Although, a lot of white people like to be like, oh, the Confederate flag was about, whatever, states' rights, whatever. For us, it was about slavery, keeping us enslaved. And so the fact that we have a totally different interpretation just goes with what I'm talking about now, how um, when it comes to whiteness, Europeans and the Caucasians and Anglo-Saxons, or whatever you want to call these people, they tend to discriminate in every way, shape, or form possible, and not just discriminate, intimidate when they do it. So it's intentional. It's not an accident. And I'm tired of people acting like they don't know what time it is. Like, it's just time to pull the sheets off of everything. Babylon is falling. The house is on fire. The emperor has no clothes. This stuff has been going on for so long. It has infected everything in society. It's the reason why we have inequity. It's the reason why everybody's being exploited now. It's the reason why this country is going to fall and fail. It's the reason why this country in the West is going to be judged, because they rule over people unfairly. They cheat us out of our wages. They cheat us out of opportunities. They cheat us out of everything they could cheat us out of. And then they'll sit around and tell us, well, if you had talent or skills, or if you were good enough, you could be where we are. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're never allowed to buy boots, if you're never allowed to get skills to learn how to tie your shoes, your boots, how do you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? How do you get boots? How do you learn how to tie your bootstraps? You don't. You just be around here looking stupid, feeling inferior when the you know cards are stacked against you from the moment you're born to the moment you die. So enough of that story. Might we see less discrimination as the younger generations ascends? No, because white people teach their children how to be racist and anti-black. Social surveys do suggest that there has been a change in people's views across generations. The other problem is, though, that, like you see now, white people don't leave their positions. They'll gatekeep. They will work till they die. They stay in the positions, and then they groom who they want to take over, and those people take over and they do the same thing. So no, younger people are not going to have a chance to do nothing despite their views changing, because their mamas and grandmamas be gatekeeping and keeping them out of positions because they know they're going to give somebody a chance, and they don't want anybody to have a chance. If you look at the survey responses in the 1970s, for example, older generations had much more conservative racial attitudes. In fact, some white Southerners in the U.S. at the time openly endorsed many forms of segregation and discrimination. Those folks have been aging out of the labor force for a long time, but it hasn't produced the change that we might expect. There does seem to be some evidence that the youngest generation, especially those who have experienced the Black Lives Matter movement, have different opinions about race and ethnicity. But I think it really remains to be seen whether and how much that is going to change hiring discrimination. It's not. Why are new European laws seemingly ineffective. There is some evidence that when anti-discrimination laws went into effect in the U.S. in the 1960s and 70s, they did have a real effect. That was likely a combination of real enforcement and the halting of some very open forms of discrimination. For example, until the 1960s, people routinely listed the desired race of applicants in domestic help wanted ads. In other countries, it's been a more gradual process. Sometimes that's due to lack of enforcement. Sometimes it's because the definition of discrimination has been different. Oh, the white people changing the definitions. Go figure. Some countries have prohibited speech and acts that represent negative opinions about different groups, but not equal treatment of the kind that constitutes hiring discrimination. But it is disappointing that there haven't been more obvious changes. In the 2000s, the European Union instituted racial equality directives that require all member countries to put into law rules that made discrimination illegal in several areas of life, including hiring, and also require certain standards about how you could enforce these laws. Our study didn't find any real effect of that directive going into play, and neither did a previous study that focused on it explicitly. So it's definitely disappointing that legislation hasn't had a bigger effect. Period. Doesn't matter what kind of legislation you put into place, white people are going to find a way to gatekeep. That is what they do. That is what they do best. Their job in life is to keep black people and other people who are non-white from getting anywhere. They are like doggone raised spray. Spray it, just keep you back, kill you. That's what they do. What can be done to reduce discrimination today? I can tell you nothing, because long as white people are alive, they're going to discriminate. Um, so it says bigger companies especially realize that if their hiring patterns show a preference of white candidates, there is both a risk of bad publicity and discrimination lawsuits. Problem is, who's going to investigate and who's going to enforce? Who's going to complain? Nobody, because these companies lie. They'll tell you anything. So like, you can't expect the problem to correct the problem. They control everything, they control all the institutions, they control all the enforcement agencies, they control HR, they control the corporations, they control even the research. Like, they do more research than anybody. It's time to let this stuff go. They ain't gonna change. And so for black people thinking, you sad because DEI is going away, it ain't never worked. The people telling you it's never worked. So you all feeling good and thinking that you're going to get some reward or some privilege. They may put a black face in a space and tell you things are different, but the evidence is here. Since the 60s, nothing has changed. It's 2023, ain't nothing changed. So, you know to all the white people who want to come in the comments and talk about merit and talents, get over yourself, because this is just basically letting you know that y'all are racist. You're not changing. You're passing it down from generation to generation to generation. From the 60s to 2023, if nothing has changed, that means white people are not changing. Period. The last thing that I want to show you is a study from NIH, the National Institutes of Health, National Library of Medicine. And this basically talked about pretty much the same thing. It's an occupational study. It was done August 2022. And it says gender and racial discrimination in hiring before and during COVID-19 pandemic, evidence of a field experiment of accountants from 2018 to 2020. So it says in this article, we ask whether macro level changes during the first year of COVID-19 pandemic relate to changes in the levels of discrimination against women and Black job seekers at the point of hire. We developed three main hypotheses: that discrimination against women and Black job seekers increases due to a reduction in labor demand. Everybody knows that. First people to leave or get fired or laid off are Black people and women in particular women who have children, women who need a lot of time off, women who are problematic, they get going first. That discrimination against women decreases due to the reduced supply of women employees and applicants, and that discrimination against Black job seekers decreases due to increased attention toward racial inequities associated with the Black Lives Matter protest during the summer of 2020. So there was a period where Black people was getting jobs because of, people felt sorry about watching George Floyd getting killed in the street. But as soon as the affirmative action was struck down, Black people have been on the streets. So it says, we test these hypotheses using a correspondence audit study collected over 2 periods, before and during the early COVID-19 pandemic, for one professional occupation, accountants. So this is a study about accountants. So it says, we find that white women experience a positive change in callbacks during the pandemic, being preferred over white men. And this change is concentrated in geographic areas that experienced relatively large decreases in women's labor supply. Black women experienced discrimination pre-pandemic, but received similar callbacks to white men during the pandemic. And that's because there was this shift and this racialized campaign with the DEI initiatives to place Black women in those positions, because Black women were groomed and presented as non-threatening. So you were not a threat to white men. You're not necessarily a threat to white women, and everybody's going to be happy. Black people, Black women was just going to be happy to be accepted in the spaces. White men, so it says Black women experienced discrimination pre-pandemic, but received similar callbacks to white men during the pandemic. In contrast to both white and Black women, discrimination against Black men is persistent before and during the pandemic. Our findings are consistent with the prediction of gender-specific changes in labor supply being associated with gender-specific changes in hiring discrimination during the COVID-19 pandemic. More broadly, our study shows how hiring decision making is related to macro level labor market processes. And so there was something I want to share with you here. Oh, here it is. So it says, given the historic shifts in labor demand, unequal gendered impacts on labor supply, as well as heightened attention to racial bias in this paper, we ask whether and how the early COVID-19 period, which we denote as the roughly 8 months following the widespread stay-at-home orders in March 2020, but before the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines in the U.S., affects gender and racial discrimination in hiring compared to the pre-pandemic for Black men and women and white women compared to white men. We predict that for each of these processes has the potential to shift hiring discrimination uniquely, which allows for an empirical test. And I don't want to talk about that, but there was a piece in here that basically I'm trying to find where exactly So it says from November 2018 to February 2020, we conducted a correspondence audit study of professional occupation accountants in the U.S. to assess discrimination in hiring by applicants' gender, men and women, and race, Black and white. Between March and April 2020, we paused data collection as cities and states issued stay-at-home orders in response to the initial COVID-19 surges. We resumed data collection in May 2020, continuing until November 2020. The 2 periods of data collection before and during the early pandemic allow for a test of how hiring discrimination changes over time, as well as the assessment regarding whether the changes in discrimination are concentrated in geographic areas that experience greater changes in job availability, women's labor supply, and Black Lives Matter protest activity. They found that pre-pandemic, Black men and Black women, but not white women, experienced discrimination relative to white men. So this study is saying that white men have been discriminated against as well over the last, say, 5-6 years, which I would agree with. All men have been discriminated against. White men is as a first because of this agenda to emasculate men. There's a preference for women in the alphabet community and to not have men in the workforce at all. There's an era to, or we're living in an era to get rid of men, period, because men are builders, men are the ones who uphold societies and build things and make communities, provide the stability that households need. And so with this new world that's coming, in, don't want men, because men also are warriors. Real men, true men, are protectors, and they war and they'll fight back. Women are easy to conquer. Alphabets are confused and easy to conquer. Children, easy to conquer. So the goal is to try to get men out of the picture, period, and that's what they've been doing. So white men also have been discriminated against. So I don't want to, in this study, discredit the fact that over the last couple of years, white men have been excluded from a lot of employment opportunities. But it's a first. We've been discriminated against for 400 years and counting. So they got a long way to catch up with us. So while they're crying and they're crying loud, yes, they're being discriminated against, but they still have more wealth than we have. They still have more opportunities than we have. They still have opportunities to gatekeep and hire who they want to hire, which is not us. So in any event, in other words, gender preferences in favor of white women emerged during the COVID-19 pandemic, and Black women fare relatively better during the pandemic than they did previously. This finding aligns with the prediction that gender-specific changes in the labor supply are associated with gender-specific changes in hiring preferences. And that is handed down from the government because they put in all these new initiatives. You hear all these, we're hiring more women, we got loans for women, we got this for women, that for women. So this is the trend that starts from the top and trickles down into corporate America. This is where you get all this DEI stuff from, but it's going away, so we don't have to worry about that. The finding aligns with prediction that gender-specific changes in labor are associated with gender-specific changes in hiring preferences. In contrast to the changing hiring preference patterns for white and Black women, we find persistent hiring discrimination against Black men before and during the early pandemic. In a secondary analysis, we find that the increased preference for white women during the early pandemic is concentrated in geographic areas that experienced larger declines in women's labor supply. In contrast, we find no clear evidence of geographic variation in effects according to either changes in demand for labor across variation in Black Lives Matter protest activity. So, and I want to go down to the conclusion. So this is it's a whole big study. But anyway, basically with the DEI stuff, here it is. Okay. So it says the findings from this article have both theoretical and applied contributions that build on our understanding of hiring discrimination as contingent on context, and in particular on the theoretical importance of the macro level labor market context in which meso level hiring decisions of hiring managers are embedded. We draw theoretical attention to the importance of labor supply composition in employers' decision-making processes, whether through resume information signaling or employers' desire to replace exiting employees with similar others. We suggest that labor supply matters for employers' gender and racial preferences. As such, we build on research that demonstrates how demand side characteristics shape by showing that supply side characteristics also shape demand. Applicant or existing workforce composition shape employers' preferences by gender. The COVID-19 pandemic offers a unique opportunity to test how changes in labor, demand, and supply affect hiring discrimination. While previous research on economic recessions finds that discrimination against racial minorities increases during recessions because of a decrease in job demand, which is basically gatekeeping. The people who are in those positions tend to look out for their own, and more white people work in HR than any other group. And I need to look that up. I seem like I did this one time before, but I don't know. Okay. So this edit came out, not edit, this story came out in 2019. I remember doing it, so I'm sorry if I am confused with writing about it and talking about it on the video, but I'm just gonna go over this. So it says HR is overwhelmingly white and female, data indicates. So 71% of HR professionals are female, according to Namely's HR Careers Report. The HR platform for mid-sized companies said its 2018 workplace diversity report revealed women represented 67% of the HR workforce. The company said it used its data of over 1,000 companies and 200,000 employees to glean its demographic insights for the HR profession. Almost two-thirds, 65% of HR professionals identify as white. The next highest representations were Asian at 12% and Hispanic at 10%. So we can't even get in positions to hire ourselves to make sure we are employed, which also leads to discrimination because, again, you got your other gatekeepers, you got your Asians and your Hispanics who also tend to work as gatekeepers and keep Black people out of positions regardless of merit and talent. Female HR managers earn an average of $91,000 a year, while their male counterparts reportedly earn $103,644 per year, a 13% difference, Namely said. Um, Stakeholders have long known that HR has a diversity problem, but efforts to resolve the issue have been sporadic. So anyway, I don't even want to get into this. I'm just wanting to end this video to prove to the white people in my comments on my DEI video and who will come to this video about why diversity, equity, and inclusion ploys will never work is because the people who form them are white people because they're the ones that have the problem. They hire token representation and then they um, don't take into consideration that they can't change the individual biases of people who work for them. They're not going to do anything about their HR department. Not going to do anything about it because they like the fact that their company is representative of white people. It's their company, so they want to be what they want to be. They don't care about fairness. They don't care about merit. They don't care about talent. At the end of the day, they care about their comfort. And their comfort is not to be around us because we're always seen as threatening, because we're always a problem, because they like to police us. And so if that means policing means keeping us out of the workforce, then that's what it is. So for Black people who think affirmative action going away is something to be sad about, it ain't never worked anyway. So don't even worry about it. just like this is a study about hiring discrimination, same thing can be found when it comes to higher ed, especially in Ivy League schools. It could be found in any field you want to choose. Same thing. White people gatekeep all over the place, in every institution, in every category. Where they control things, they gatekeep. It doesn't matter if it's finances, money, economics, education, policing, law, government, politics. It's the same thing. So, for the people who are talking about merit and talents, suck a egg. Um, y'all better prepare for judgment, because this disingenuous argument y'all always like to use about, if fairness doesn't matter, doesn't have anything to do about fairness. You can't even screen for merit and talent if you have implicit biases. You can't be fair if you're already biased. If you're in a position to select candidates based on who's the best candidate for the position, if you're screening out names, you're not being fair. If you're screening out neighborhoods, you're not being fair. If you're screening out for age or for college that someone attended, maybe they attended um, historically black college, or a Spanish serving institution. Maybe someone has a different last name, like a African last name, or a Spanish last name, or ethnic, last name, first name. Maybe someone has a picture on their resume. Hopefully, people aren't doing that, but I know times are different. And you can see that the person is something other than white. People have all sorts of ways to gatekeep, and they do it. And they've been doing it for a long time. These studies show they've been doing it since the 60s, since the 90s. It's 2023, 2024. People are still doing it. And we're having a conversation about affirmative action going away. And not only that, now white women are getting ready to lose their gravy train positions of trying to teach white people how not to be racist. It ain't never going to happen. White people are never going to change. They're never going to change. If these studies and articles haven't shown you anything, it's a couple generations and they haven't changed. They're not going to change. They're not going to change their institutions. They're not going to change their perceptions. They're definitely not going to stop gatekeeping. And so that's why it is in Black folks' best interest to decouple yourselves from all these ploys, from all these schemes, from all these different groups, and focus on Black people. Nobody's going to help you do nothing. In fact, everybody else is working together to keep you out. So if you are a Black person and you're listening to this, wake up. It doesn't matter if affirmative action is dead. It doesn't matter if they roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, because the gatekeepers were always there. The gatekeepers were never going to let you in. And this was just a scam to make people feel good, to get money, to rosy up some corporation's image, or board's image, or CEO's image. They don't work. None of this stuff works, because white supremacy believes in subjugation, domination, and extermination of our people. And so once you understand that, you check out of everything. It's easier for you to come out of her. It's easier for you to come out of the system, because they're not going to ever change. It's like being in a relationship with somebody who keeps beating you, and you keep asking them, will you stop beating me? But they don't have the capacity to stop. They don't want to stop. That's what they know. That's what they do. And so that's all they're going to do. The only thing that's going to stop you from getting beat is for you to remove yourself from the relationship. And so this is what African American Black people must do. You must take yourself out of the political system. They don't care about you. Quit caring about their laws and policies that were meant to protect you. They were never meant to protect you. The only thing that anything did for us was to help everybody except for us. How did white women get in affirmative action? They have no business being in affirmative action, but they were in there. They were the beneficiaries of whatever white men gained, but we could not benefit at all because we got our stuff co-opted. So one of the things that I want y'all to do is make peace with the fact that diversity, equity, inclusion doesn't work. Make peace with the fact that it's going away. It never worked, so no need to care about it anyway. Get rid of sadness about affirmative action. It didn't work. Stop trying to change white people and tell them about racism. You ain't gonna stop them from being racist. No need to even argue with them because you cannot argue with them. They know everything already. They create the rules and they think that they are righteous without no fault. Judgment is coming to this country and they're going to have to give an account for all the stuff that they have done. The only thing we can do is prepare ourselves for what's coming and try to be as self-sufficient as possible. The best thing I feel like for us is that we've survived all this time despite all the stuff that they've tried to throw at us, all the stuff that they've done to us, all the stuff they've used to keep us out of the workforce. Somehow we've been able to make it. And we're going to be okay. A lot of us are going to struggle because we love this system and we just believe, things are going to turn around. Ain't nothing going to turn around. Europe ain't going to turn around. America is not going to turn around. They don't like you. They don't like you. They don't like me. They don't like my children, my grandchildren. They don't like my sons. They don't like my daddy. They don't like none of the brothers that I know. They don't like us. They're never going to like us. They're never going to give us anything. They're never going to be fair. They're never going to have mercy for us. They're never going to be just. The only person that is going to be able to hold these people accountable is the creator. And so that's what I'm hanging my hat on. You can believe or you cannot believe, but what you better do is divest from this system because it's falling. These people are not going to change. They control everything. They're losing power. They don't even know they're losing power. They're losing their grip on the world. They don't even understand that the whole world hates them. But they're still sitting up here proud and righteous and haughty about merit and talents. They don't have no talents. Everything they got, they done stole from everybody. They done cheated us out of so much stuff and other people all across the world to get to where they are. They're still talking about merit and talent. There's something wrong with those people. And all I have to say is, I'm going to pray for y'all. That's all I can do. But I don't have time to argue with you. I don't have time to go back and forth about diversity, equity, and inclusion and fairness and merit and talent because the whole world knows y'all don't have nothing without taking from other people and copying other people. You have no talent. You bring nothing to the table. You have nothing without taking from other people. So even opportunity. The only reason you have opportunity because you keep people from opportunities. If we had fair opportunities, a fair shake at anything, we'd run circles around you, proving it too many times to even count. So I'm not even concerned. For the Black people who are listening to this, just understand nothing changes. So understand where we are in the big scheme of things. Babylon is falling. The emperor has no clothes. The whole world sees what's going on. Everybody knows that they have discriminated against us, and everybody is sitting back and waiting for this thing to fold. So let it go. Let it go. There is nothing that you can do to prevent what's coming. If you are a racist, I suggest you repent and try to do some recompense, because what is coming is not going to be nice. And I pray that our people are found worthy to escape. But y'all are going to have to give an account for all the things that y'all have done. It's in writing, it's here. If I can see it, other people can see it. The Creator can see it. He knows all things. And so you're not going to escape. You're not going to be able to lie your way out of it. You ain't going to be able to talk your way around it. You're not going to be able to hide from it. It's here. So, with that, who cares if affirmative action is done? Who cares what they're talking about in politics for 2024? It doesn't matter. It ain't going to help us anyway. We in trouble, and we need to be calling out to the Most High, to the Creator, because there's nothing these people are going to do to prevent us from falling. They want us to fall, and that is what's going to happen if we don't do something to protect ourselves. All right. This is Marty K. Please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Share this with any fool who is still going on about affirmative action and who is talking about anti-racism in 2024. It doesn't matter. They're not going to change. They're incapable of changing. In 50 years, if they have not changed, 60 years, they ain't gonna change. It's a genetic defect. They're anti-blackness. But we know it always goes back to Esau and Jacob. So with that said, keep prepping, keep praying, keep seeking the Most High. Try to become as self-sufficient as possible so that you don't have to go to these gatekeepers for anything, because the people who work for them now, who are bragging about merit and talent, it's not going to matter soon, because they're all going to be looking at us for help. And guess what? We going to hopefully be out of here. I'm looking for the Exodus. I am looking for our corridor of escape, because this place is going to fall, and it's going to fall because these people won't repent for their sins against us. They've never done recompense, and they are going to have to pay. Unfortunately, by the time they figure it out, it's going to be too late. So that's all I want to say, y'all. I'm going to end this video. Discrimination in hiring is here to stay. So it's only going to get worse with AI, and it's only going to get worse as the divisions among us are stoked, and that is happening right now. So Black people, get ready. Again, continue to prep, continue to pray, continue to seek the Most High, obey those laws, statutes, and commandments, learn those laws, statutes, and commandments, learn how to come out from amongst these people, because they are savage, honey. As you can see, they have all sorts of covert ways of sticking you, and you don't even know. So come out from among them, become self-sufficient, learn how to work with your people, learn how to love your people, learn how to employ your people, learn how to do good business with and for your people, and prepare to leave this place, because this place is literally hell on earth for us. All right. I'm Marley K, and I'm out.